My name is Chuma Chinyo, and I am your family lawyer. I was called to the Nigerian bar in 1988, and I have over 35 years' experience in family law practice. I've helped countless families navigate Nigeria's complex legal terrain, and I am desirous of bringing this knowledge and expertise to you free of any charges.
An American author, James Thurber, is quoted to have likened marriage to a building under attack. He said that marriage is like a besieged fortress. Those who are outside want to get in desperately, and those who are inside want to get out desperately. In simple language, those who are not married are desperately desirous of getting married because our churches are filled with singles, women and men, praying for life partner, as we call it. But indeed, those who are already married, quite a number, desperately want to get out of that marriage and are praying to God to heal their marriages. In colloquial parlance, to go Lagos, no hard. And to come back, na be wahala. Certainly not easy. But let's try and put this in perspective. For a few, marriage is a proverbial bed of roses with only a few thorns. For many, marriage is tough, requiring tolerance, endurance, and often the often abused word, patience. For some, getting married is easier than remaining married. And yet, for some others, getting out of marriage is even much more difficult. If you're happily married in the true sense, watch this episode and share with that family member or friend who is looking for a pathway out of the bondage that their marriage has become. If you are one of those in the besieged fortresses but can't find your way out, this episode is for you. In this unique episode, we'll show you how to legally escape from that fortress. The feedback from our previous episodes on the 3 types of marriages in Nigeria showed that many people who are unhappy in their marriages have remained there because they do not know what to do to end their difficult marriages. Unbelievably, many have no clue that marriage is actually a contract, and that where there are breaches of the fundamental terms of a marriage, the victim can terminate the contract. This is true. Are you married under the Marriage Act, or under Sharia, Islamic law, or in accordance with your traditional law and custom? Each of these has a relatively straightforward process for the dissolution of the marriage. But too many people are ignorant of these processes. Please do not mistake us to be advocates of quick divorce or divorce as a quick fix for a difficult marriage. We're only saying that when you have reached your wit's end, when you cannot find any other way to make that marriage work, if your life is threatened, like we showed in previous episodes, in the last episode actually, if you think you're going to die if you continue that marriage, we're going to show you the way out of it. But if you just met challenges, find a way. Before we take you through the legally valid steps for the dissolution of a marriage, let me burst your bubble. There is no such thing under our laws as sign the divorce papers. The stuff you see often on Nigerian movies is alien to our laws. It is a movie fad, copied and pasted straight from Hollywood. It is a fact around nonsense. You can't divorce anybody by giving him a paper to say sign and then you are divorced. It is not correct. Having clarified that, now we'll give you an easy to understand and follow step-by-step guide to dissolve a marriage contracted under the Marriage Act. You know, ordinarily referred to this marriage, so for clarity, some call it church wedding or court wedding. For a better understanding of this type of marriage, watch episode 2 on YouTube or visit our website so you can understand what church or court or white wedding actually is. To dissolve a marriage under the Marriage Act, you need to follow the following steps. Once your marriage is contracted pursuant to the Marriage Act, you can only dissolve it, end that marriage, in accordance with the provisions of what is called the Matrimonial Causes Act. Without a doubt, the first step is to consult a lawyer. Now, the second step is also to talk to a lawyer. And equally, third step, talk to a lawyer. That is to say, when you have reached that point where family cannot help, you need to get a lawyer involved. The lawyer will listen to you and determine the grounds for dissolution, such as adultery, cruelty, desertion, irreconcilable differences, or some other factor. The next, your lawyer will prepare a petition stating the grounds for dissolution. He will take into account your personal details, the marriage details. Then he will file the petition at the High Court or the state where the marriage was registered or where the petitioner resides for convenience. But of course, the Matrimonial Causes Act says that the whole of Nigeria is one jurisdiction for matrimonial causes, insofar as the petitioner can prove that he's resident in Nigeria. The lawyer will then ensure that the following steps are taken or done by the court. First, the bailiffs will have to serve your spouse, whom is often called a respondent in the petition. That person has to be served with a copy of the petition and a summons to appear in court. Upon service on your husband or wife, the bailiff will obtain a proof of service and file an affidavit to that effect in the court records. Your estranged spouse may then file a response, which is called an answer under the Matrimonial Causes Act, within a specified time, usually around 30 days. And he or she may also file a counterclaim, a counter petition, alleging different grounds or perhaps the same grounds for dissolution against you. The petition and the counter petition, where is applicable, usually will contain claims of either parties regarding the custody of the children of the marriage, regarding claims for alimony, and of course, property division. The court then may schedule a pre-trial conference to discuss possibilities of settlement and mediation or other possible alternatives. The court may grant interim orders, such as alimony pendente lease, that is to say, giving you some money, perhaps let's take the wife as an example, giving her some money to maintain her usual standard of living while the matter is in court. The court then schedules a hearing date to determine the petition. Both parties will be expected to present their evidence, call witnesses, and perhaps themselves testify. The court will deliver a judgment, either granting or dismissing the petition. If the petition is granted, the court will issue what is called a decree nisi, which is a provisional dissolution of the marriage, pending the possibility of reconciliation, which means the court really extends huge, long olive branches to couples, hoping that they can reconcile. But if after usually between 3 to 6 months, nothing happens, you still have war, the court will then issue a decree absolute, which finalizes the dissolution. Thereafter, the court may need to divide the property of the marriage, including real estate, some other assets, and maybe decide who pays which debts. The court may need to determine the custody and maintenance arrangements for children. Either party may appeal the judgment of the decree. But let's be clear about something, and this is critical. You see that when you go into a divorce proceeding, you hand over your life. It is now another person, a stranger, who determines what happens to your property, what happens to your children, and how much money is needed to maintain your lifestyle. It's avoidable. Avoid it if you can. Now, let's talk about Islamic marriages. We spent a lot of time talking about this in previous episodes. I think it was episode 8 that you may need to go back to watch. The husband must give notice of the intention to divorce his Islamic wife. The husband can pronounce the talaq, or the wife can initiate the whole divorce by mutual agreement. When the husband refuses, the wife can then initiate proceedings for divorce at the Sharia court. Yes, please watch episode 8 of Your Family Lawyer for details on how to get a divorce under Sharia law. As we told you in that episode, there's usually a period allowed for arbitration, mediation, and reconciliation, which the couple are enjoined to attempt. And if after 3 months the window closes for possible reconciliation, then the divorce becomes absolute under Islamic law. When in Islamic divorce, the parties end up in court and the matter is heard, if the court grants the divorce, it will issue a judgment dissolving the marriage. After the dissolution, the wife is expected to observe the Ida, the waiting period before the marriage. She must wait for, I think, a period of 3 months. The husband, in turn, is expected to have paid the mahar to the wife And if he hasn't paid or hasn't paid all of it, the court will require him to complete that process. Then the court may need to divide the property, as is usual with divorces, including real estate assets and debts. But this must be done in accordance with the Sharia law. And then the court often too will need to determine the custody and maintenance arrangements for the children, in accordance again with Islamic law. Either parties they should have the right to appeal the judgment to a higher, that is the Sharia Court of Appeal. There is no time a divorce is easy, whether it is accordance with the Marriage Act or Islamic law, or even traditional marriages. And regarding traditional marriages, the dissolution of a customary law marriage in Nigeria is a little more complex because of variations in culture and customs. But the basic principles outlined uh, in the previous episodes, which we will just highlight for you here, are representative of the standard practices. The aggrieved spouse must notify the family heads of or the community heads through his or her own family leaders of the intention to dissolve the marriage. So note this difference because it matters. Under customary law, you don't just wake up and say you want to dissolve a marriage. The families that contracted the marriage in the first place must be involved. You notify them, and it is your family that will inform the other family. And the grounds will often include abuse, irreconcilable differences, adultery, abandonment, failure to provide, in which case the community heads will convene a family meeting to discuss the dissolution of the marriage. But first, they will attempt to mediate to resolve any disputes and reach a mutually acceptable agreement. If mediation fails, the dissatisfied spouse may then file a petition with the customary court to dissolve the marriage and serve the petition on the respondent, that is to say, the other spouse. But you know that sometimes too, that the parties can actually, the two families can agree to the dissolution of the marriage, and there will be no need to go to court. But when they can't agree, the customary court will schedule a hearing to determine the petition. If the court grants the petition to issue a judgment dissolving the marriage, the court may then need to, of course, divide the properties in accordance with customary law, including real estate, the debts that may be owed. But all of this must be in accordance with the prevailing custom of under which they got married. But of course, that custom must not be repugnant to equity, to natural justice, and to good conscience, and must not be in conflict with the Constitution or any prevailing law for the time being. Then that court often has to determine the custody and maintenance arrangements for the children of the marriage. This runs across all kinds of marriages: custody, maintenance, and issue of how the spouse is to survive thereafter. Then there is a return of the dowry, which is standard practice for dissolution of customary marriages in Nigeria. The wife's family will need to refund the dowry paid at the inception of the marriage. Of course, either party has the right to appeal the judgment of the customary court of appeal, and then the High Court. Please note that customary law varies across different ethnic groups and communities in Nigeria. What we have said here is basically just to provide you a general guideline and to specify procedures which may differ depending on the community or the customary court or the customary law in question. If you need more clarity, please consult with a lawyer who is versed in customary law practice or a customary law expert in your community for personalized guidance. We will quickly tell you two short stories that may guide you for the purposes of how you go about your divorce. A certain Mrs. Akimbola filed a petition for divorce against her husband, Mr. Akimbola, at the High Court of Lagos State. She cited irreconcilable differences and cruelty as grounds for divorce. However, her husband challenged the petition, arguing that his wife had not followed the correct procedure for filing a divorce petition. This case will highlight the importance of engaging a good family law lawyer so that, in spite of having a good case, you don't jeopardize your chances of getting what you desire from the court. When this matter went on appeal, the court held that the petitioner actually, that is, the wife, did not, in fact, follow the correct procedure for filing a divorce petition as required by the Matrimonial Causes Act. Specifically, the court said the petitioner must file a petition at the High Court of the state where the marriage was registered or where the respondent resides, or in any event, wherever she has filed it, would have had to prove that she was ordinarily resident in Nigeria to enable her file a petition anywhere else. Then she ought to have served the respondent with a copy of the petition and the supporting affidavit. The petitioner must allow for time for the petition. That is to say, she ought to have allowed for time for the petition to be served on the husband. And then she must file an affidavit verifying the facts that are stated in the petition. It's when these are done that the court will schedule a proper hearing, and then you have a proper case in court. She did not comply with some of this, and the court emphasized that the failure to follow these steps and procedures resulted in the petition being struck out. Now, she wasn't heard at all because she didn't follow the appropriate procedure. Stuck with the husband? Maybe not. The matter was struck out, not dismissed, so she could go back, get a good lawyer, and start all over again. But in the meantime, she will be suffering because she's not properly married and she's not divorced. So when you need to file a divorce, ensure that you get a good lawyer, that you follow the points highlighted for you here, and that procedure is observed strictly to avoid setbacks. The next story is not too different from this one, but it shows us how you should go about a divorce in a customary setting. Again, Mrs. Ojo was married to her husband, Mr. Ojo, under customary law. They got married in 2005. The marriage was blessed with 2 lovely children. However, as it happens sometimes, the marriage became troubled. The center could no longer hold, and the wife sought to dissolve the marriage. She went and filed a petition at the High Court of Lagos State, seeking to dissolve her marriage, which she contracted under customary law. She don't miswrote. As you can see, if you got married under customary law, you ought to go back to a customary court to get a divorce. You can't proceed to the High Court to get a divorce for a marriage that you contracted under customary law. We're saying this because the essence of what we're discussing today is that you do not perish in ignorance. The High Court of Lagos State, of course, looked at the matter and said it lacked jurisdiction to entertain the petition for the dissolution of a customary marriage. The court said that the correct place to go to initiate proceedings for the dissolution of a customary marriage is the customary court. And so, she had to go start all over again, and in the meantime, enjoy perhaps what was a very difficult marriage. So if you find yourself at a point where you have to get divorced, it is important that you talk to a competent lawyer who will guide you and ensure that you get the desired outcomes. It is not that she was bound to continue with that marriage. No, certainly not. But to get out of that marriage, she would then need to go back to the customary court to start all over again. In the meantime, time, which waits for no one, is going. In the meantime, the sufferings of the marriage persist, and perhaps the possibility of remarriage will be kept in abeyance until she gets to the end of that matter. And to wrap up this episode of today's of Your Family Lawyer, I would like to urge us to reflect on the possibilities and the endless heartache that divorce brings.
This has been today's episode of Your Family Lawyer. I am persuaded that we have been able to illuminate the dark pathways of divorce for those who need it. But before I leave your home today, here are a few tips to avoid divorce. First, do not marry for the wrong reasons. Do not marry for the sake of money. Do not marry for the sake of fame, or even for how good looking that man or that woman is. And please, Never marry because the sex is good. Don't raise your eyebrows. Please don't. Some men, and even for some women, actually, will marry sometimes because the sex was very good at the beginning. But trust me, good looks, money, fame are transient. They are too transient to sustain a marriage. Secondly, don't just marry who you love. When you get married, when you are already married, love that person to whom you are married. It will enable you to build a lasting marriage. Lastly, make it a lifelong commitment to be good to your spouse, even when you're not happy with him or her. Next Saturday, when we'll continue our deep dive into family law by bringing insights into alimony and child support after a divorce, you will understand more what I've been trying to say, that you need to avoid a divorce. But if you must, then we'll talk to you next week about alimony and child support after divorce. Until then, stay informed and be empowered. And please, be good to your family. My name is Chu Machinye, and I'm your family lawyer.